I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick. He's the senior analyst for Edelson Institute. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thanks very much for having me on.
You've published a lot of articles on investing in marijuana. How's that working out right now?
Oh, actually, it's working out pretty well. The HMMJ, which is the fund that I always talk about when you and I speak about this, it's actually doing quite well now, and this might actually warm the hearts of your listeners. Some of the best stocks to buy are those marijuana producers up in Canada. They all took a rest. Many of them consolidated for months, but now they're starting to pick up again. And so if they're 40, 50% off what they were at their peaks back in, say, maybe February, I mean, now you're actually getting them at a bargain because we're that much closer to the actual legalization in Canada next year. And now people are looking at how much marijuana is going to have to be supplied and who's going to supply it. And many of these companies are looking good. In fact, my subscribers took profits on Canopy Growth, and now we're back in, and we're racking up some nice open gains because, you know, that's one of the good stocks to be in.
Colorado has a problem because the government sold marijuana so much more expensive than the homegrown. They're having a problem with dealing with that, so they want to make it punishable to sell your own pot. Well, it's just like making your own alcohol and selling it as well, I guess. Yeah,
well, what they have to do is they have to lower the taxes. They are making plenty of money on this, by the way. Nevada also. Nevada's making a heck of a lot of money on the taxes on marijuana and on fees especially. So they just have to lower the taxes, make it workable, because one of the goals of this is to put criminals out of business, right? So I think that's what they really have to do. They have to approach this really seriously and say, okay, what's the tax rate at which, you know, what we sell? It's not going to be worth a hassle of people to actually buy illegal stuff.
How's the U.S. dollar doing right now?
Oh, it's not doing bad. Last time you and I talked 2 weeks ago, I was talking about the U.S. dollar looking ready to rally. And sure enough, it has been rallying. Now, that rally seems to be running into some overhead resistance. I mean, it was a nice move. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see some weakness here. And that's why in my personal account, I can tell you, I had inverse a gold position, so I took that off, took some gains. And in Supercycle Investor, I just recommended people buy two copper producers because copper's looking even stronger than gold. And so you started this by actually speaking about the U.S. dollar. Now I'm speaking about metals, but that's because metals are priced in the U.S. dollar. Therefore, as the U.S. dollar goes up, they tend to go down. As the U.S. dollar tends to cool off, they tend to heat up. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the U.S. dollar cool off a little bit. We're seeing the metal space heat up a little bit. And so I think there's some real potential there. I still think that the U.S. dollar's in an uptrend that could last a while. But this correction could go on for a while, so you might as well ride it, I think.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the U.S. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the U.S. and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Sean Brodrick. Sean, going back to copper, while we're talking right now, the price of copper hasn't gone up, and it's pulled back from its high of about $3.14, but still you feel it's going to be strong going out into the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is up on the day, but yeah, so we'll just have to see how things go, but there's a bunch of things that are in its favor, and I'm speaking about things like in China, for example, the scrap imports of copper rose 16.8% in the first 7 months of this year. And that's because, China has this terrible pollution problem. And one thing that they are doing is they are just really stopping production of some of the worst grades of like metal that really cause lots of pollution. So that means that China will import more copper. And also Indonesia has a huge copper gold mine called Grasberg, which is owned or was owned by like Freeport. But now the government of Indonesia is getting very grabby. And so people are expecting, that could interrupt the production there, or else maybe just slow it down. And so that's also bullish for copper. And then we had 3 hurricanes here in the U.S., which wrecked infrastructure, wrecked home appliances, wrecked all sorts of things which now need to be replaced. And many of the ingredients in those things that have to be rebuilt is copper. So you put those things together, and actually things are looking pretty good for copper right now.
They've tried for years to come up with substitutes for copper. Aluminum will conduct electricity rather well, but it's not very flexible. You flex a piece of aluminum wire 3 or 4 times, it breaks. Copper doesn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like something they do for long distance electricity movement, is they use aluminum. But I used to have a friend, he would fly to China like every month to visit this factory that was always trying to substitute something for copper. Often it was aluminum, and he would go there every month and he would see if it would pass whatever test that it had to pass, and 9 times out of 10 it would not pass. That's the problem, is copper is a very, very useful metal. It's hard to substitute at a certain point. There is some low-hanging fruit, most of which has been done, but at this point, they really need to use it.
Well, in my condo, the guy who used to live here was an engineer, and he substituted some of the copper with aluminum, and I've had to just basically board up those outlets because they're untrustworthy.
Oh, man, I am sorry you're stuck with that. And yeah, that's one of the things, we just have to really deal with. One thing that will be interesting is how they rebuild Puerto Rico, right? Because that whole island was trashed, and it had an old electrical system anyway. Now's the chance to rebuild that into maybe not state-of-the-art, but at least 21st century. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. Whatever they do, though, is going to require a lot of copper.
And, eventually they're going to be hit by another hurricane. Why not bury your power lines now and make them less vulnerable?
Well, that's what actually we did here in Florida. And we, of course, had the edge of one of those hurricanes. And we didn't lose our power until the last night of the hurricane, and we actually got it back the next morning. And that's because they really buried lots of stuff and really reinforced it, and it really made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's more expensive to install, but then you don't have the expense of digging it up. People said to me, what about flooding? I said, it's in pipes.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if it gets wet. It doesn't get to the electricity. And
Right, exactly.
and I've seen that in my own neighborhood here when there's a windstorm. One side of the street has buried power lines, the other side doesn't. Guess whose lights were still on after the storm?
Yeah, you get one guess, right?
Yeah. We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after this.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're talking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, some of the things that have really picked up after the hurricanes hit, auto sales. Ford, I think, has gone up something like 8%, 9% in sales. GM, 11%. A big boom for the automakers.
Yeah, well, I actually happen to own Ford personally, and mainly I bought it because I saw what happened in like Houston when all those cars flooded. And so, yeah, a lot of them will have to be replaced. And so there is a lot going on there. I think autos are a good place to invest right now. There's a bunch of cycles in their favor. One other thing is lumber. You and I were having a conversation before we went on the air about how the price of lumber is soaring. Well, who sells lumber? You know, if you can buy the stock of a company that sells lumber, it's really doing well because, I mean, it takes a long time to replace that lumber. And of course, you have that huge fire up in Canada as well. So all these things coming together, and these are the things that are doing well now and should continue to do well going forward.
The 28% tariff on Canadian softwood, any talk about removing it?
Yes, there is, or at least maybe lowering it. But of course, nothing moves fast in Washington, D.C., but we hope they can move fast on that. There's a lot of people that really need to have their homes rebuilt.
Are they going to use traditional building techniques again, or are they going to try to perhaps bunkerize their home a bit, make them out of concrete?
Well, here in Florida, after we had some really severe hurricanes, Hurricane Andrew, in fact, it was, they changed the laws on how you could build homes. And I think we're so much better off for it, you know? I mean, everything's concrete and steel. You have aluminum shutters. And I hope they do that in Texas. They make homes stronger. And you can still have beautiful homes, right? But they just cost a little more, and they're much, much stronger.
Well, if you built an igloo-shaped home out of concrete, it would be pretty well tornado-proof.
No one wants to live in an igloo.
Not even the people who live in igloos want to live in igloos. I
they
can
don't.
testify
Exactly.
to that. They can't wait to move into a proper house. On cars as well, Tesla says bottlenecks are causing production problems for their Model 3, which people slapped down huge deposits on, I think, 2-3 years ago. Any surprise there?
No surprise to me. I mean, they have really been pushing the edge with their, production plans, and now there's something else coming up. And they have this problem, certainly, but the bigger problem for them is that in the next couple of years, 80 new different types of electric vehicles are going to hit the market. And so, they used to kind of stand out and be alone, but now they're going to be in a crowded field. Even Dyson, which is a maker of hand dryers and vacuums, even they are going to make an electric car. Now, speaking about overreaching themselves, I think the plans that company has put forward are really too optimistic. But it just shows, the general movement where everybody wants to build electric vehicles now. This, of course, is really bullish for all the energy metals, which I keep boring you to death about. But, you know what? We had a pullback in those recently, lithium especially, and I just told my subscribers last week that now is a good time to buy them again because we really came down to an inflection point and the money came in. The big money can just see the big trend in the electric car mega trend, in the energy metal super cycle. They can see what's going on there. And so they want a piece of this right now. And so that's why people should be looking at near-term mines that can start producing things like lithium and cobalt and you name it, like within the next couple years, because those companies, either they will have the money to actually build those mines, and so that could happen, or more likely they'll actually be like a purchase by larger miners that have some money to throw around. And so I think that's what we'll really see in that space, and that's a real investment opportunity.
In England, anticipating a lot of electric cars, in fact, they've mandated them by 2040, I believe, is they have what they call the Green Way. On their motorways now, there's a lane that will automatically charge your car as you drive in it.
Yes, well, again, they have mandated it by 2040, which is after everyone who has made that law will retire. So it can change, but it also might become sooner, because now China's talking about 2030 as like a real target for them, you know? And so China is the world's largest car market. And if they can really push forward with this, you might be surprised who gets dragged along in that wake. And you might see other people stepping up as well. Because, you know, no one wants to be left behind on this. Everyone wants to be on the leading edge and have the newest technology. And also it's just, you know, much more efficient. It's much cleaner. There's less pollution. There's a whole bunch of reasons to actually make this transition. And many people will be kicking and screaming, that's for sure. But, you know, there's some real potential here, and I think that a lot of people will really want to catch this wave.
Sean, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick. He's the senior analyst for EdelsenInstitute.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Any questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.